Previously on Spenelli Speaks. Anne Shirley has got a mouth. Man, she is a non-stop chatterbox.
Know you've been a good friend, and that's in the thick and thin, and I know it's never gonna end, 'cause you've been a good friend.
Hi everyone, Danny here. Welcome back to my channel. Today is my March wrap-up, and I made sure that I was wearing bits of green because March having St. Patrick's Day, as well as the fact that I read 2 books that had green in the title, so I figured I might as well wear my green. Now, this past month, so March, was middle grade March, and it's the one month that I really do mindfully read more of that specific read-along. And this time around, I did end up reading 7 middle grade books, which were fantastic. I think collectively as a group, they were pretty good. So I was pretty pleased with that. On top of that, I did read 2 fiction books. So all in all, I did finish 9 books in the month of March. I did DNF one, so it would have been 10 had I finished that one, but that is a-okay. I also read a little bit in some of my year-long reads, so I'll kind of tell you a little bit about that as we go through the wrap-up. If you are new here, I hope you take some time, hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Would be happy for you to join in this amazing community and see what I've been up to. I post every Tuesday and Saturday. If you have been around the block, you know how much I love you. So thank you so much for being here and supporting me and my reading journal. So let's talk a little bit about the books that I read. I'm not going to talk about these in any particular order, but I'll just kind of go through my list. If you follow my channel, you know I have like a little book journal, and then I have like all of my books that I read or want to read, and then I kind of rate them on a 3-tiered scale. That includes content, which is like the writing and writing style. Engagement, which just purely what I thought as I was reading. And then creativity, just like, have I seen this before? Is it something that the author really, blew me away with? So those are the 3 things that I use. I round those together, and then that gives me my Goodreads score. So I round up if the decimal is low or it is different. So let's go ahead and just go down my list because it might just be easier for me in the long run to do it that way. Which the first book is one of my year-long read-alongs. So I am reading People's Tragedy with Christy over at Dostoevsky in Space. I am to it's page 42, which in a textbook like this is seemingly not very far in, but it is when you are annotating, taking notes, that kind of thing. I think Christy thinks I'm way ahead of her, but in actuality, I don't believe I am. She said she finished the first chapter, which I'm not even sure where I'm at as far as chapter spacing. Okay, so if that's chapter 1, the Dynasty. Oh yeah, so I'm past chapter 1. I'm in chapter 2, but not very far. It looks like 3 pages in. So I think we're pretty much in the same spot. But I mean, as you can tell, it's going to take us all a year. And realistically, I think I'm definitely behind from where I'm supposed to be. I think we are supposed to be, yeah, in February and March, we're supposed to finish 157 pages. I'm on page 42. So I'm a good 100 pages behind where we're supposed to be. But again, we're not in any hurry to finish it. It's more or less just reading it together. This has been really great. So People's Tragedy is the Russian Revolution from 1891 to 1924. And what's really fantastic about this is the way that it's written really gives you an idea of the people of the nation and their feelings and their strife depending on who is ruling the empire at that time. Right now, we are very much in the midst of the Romanov dynasty, which is the last Tsar. So if you're familiar with Anastasia and that whole Disney movie, I guess, that is very much where we're at right now, seeing how the Tsar of the time, Tsar Nicholas II, really had no idea what it was to run an empire, a country as large as he had. He very much was old school in the sense of divine power. And that was really his downfall. As we know historically, him and his family were killed for political reasons, to basically abolish the dynasty and move on to a better reform. So yes, so that's where we are. Right now, I just passed the portion where we learned a little bit more about Rasputin, and he is disgusting. Like, ugh, some of the stuff in there, I was like, whoa, that's nasty. This guy, I cannot believe the amount of power that they gave him. But like they said, when you have a sick child, you'll do anything. So that's where we're at with that. I will update my Goodreads to reflect like where I'm at and like a little snippet of thought. So if you want to follow along with where I'm at in this book, that will definitely be updated later on, if it's not already. So that's the first one. And so far, so good. I'm not going to rate it at this point, but it's been a pretty good read. The second book that I read real early on, like the first week of March, because Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf and I were so excited to get our hands on the third and final book in the series of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which the last one is called As Good as Dead. And it was so fantastic. I did actually end up rating it 5 stars, which if you know me, I am pretty stingy with my 5 stars. And I have to tell you, because of the way that this book just wrapped up the series, came full circle, I was so engaged. I love the mixed media. It's definitely worth a good read. So I gave it 5 stars. I can't tell you too much about this as it is the third in the series. But overall, Good Girl's Guide to Murder series is a YA mystery thriller. I'm not much of a YA reader, but what I will say is you don't feel like it's YA other than the fact that the characters are teenagers. I feel like Holly Jackson does a really fantastic job of creating a story that all of the loose ends, get tied up by the time you're done with the full series. I think it was fantastic. There were things in this third book that wrapped back to the first book, and the ending was so insane. I just never saw that coming. I will say, as a small little it felt completely out of character, but at the same time, it could potentially be part of her character. So it was a great read. I highly recommend that one. The next book in my list here was actually our book club pick for Double Booked Co. So in March, we read Kate Milford's Green Glass House. If you have already been part of that, you'll know we had our live discussion on this. So I'll link that in the cards for you. But this is a middle grade read. It's a mystery. It involves Milo, who is an adopted son of the Pines, who own the Green Glass House, which is a smuggler's inn. And they, over the Christmas holiday, end up having a ton of guests that stay and things start to go missing. There's a little bit of mystery and storytelling involved. I liked this book. I think I ended up giving it a 3-star. Let's see here. Yes, so 3-star rating on Goodreads. And our discussion on the book in our book club was mixed in the sense that I think there wasn't anybody that had less than a 3-star, but there was a lot of people that had it as a 5-star. I loved this book, loved reading it aloud to their children. I think for myself, I'm a little more critical of books. There was a few things in here that felt a little, I guess, too old for me for middle grade. I felt like the language was a little older than middle grade. I felt like the chapters were too long for middle grade. I liked the characters, don't get me wrong, but then there was a lot of like, moments. You know, it's a smuggler's inn, but what, you don't really go through the smuggler bit. Like, why is it a smuggler's inn? Why does it have to be a smuggler's inn? I mean, it worked for the story to a certain extent, but there was really no smuggling happening. So that was kind of weird. And then there was stuff that happened at the end that I'm not going to give as a spoiler, but that was kind of like, oh, so now it's this kind of story. So there's just a few things where I was like, what? But I'm sure as a middle grade child, you probably would just love this book. So yeah, still 3 stars, still a great rating. Had fun reading it. Had fun reading it with my book club. If you want to join Double Book Club, please feel free. Comment below. Let me know. I'll help you get attached somehow. But we have such a great group of people, and it just makes the reading experience so much more fun because everyone just has a nice time. No one, it's not crude. It's not, no one's making fun of anybody. I know sometimes with social media networks, you can get, really weird comments and people being mean, but booktube in general and our book club is just fantastic group of people. So let me know if you want to jump on that. In April, we are reading This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger, so that should be pretty interesting. Next book on my list is Johnny Tremain. Okay, so if you follow me, you know the reason why I'm reading this book is because my brother, one of my brothers, this is his favorite book. And he has been on my case to read it for quite some time. So I finally read it, and I own it. I have this copy here, but I read it primarily through audiobook, and then sometimes I would follow along with the reading. And I know I previously mentioned giving this a 3-star rating, but after talking to my brother, who was not happy with my review of the book, said that I was only giving it a 3 because I felt bad, and he's right. I'm giving this a 2-star rating, and I think it's because I feel like the story was really flat. I feel like I have read better wartime books, and not that this was a bad book by any means. Obviously, it's won the Newbery. I think the story in general is, okay. Johnny Tremain himself, I don't know that he actually grows in the book. I did not get that feeling from him. I know Krista from Books and Jams was supposed to have read this book, so I'm kind of waiting to see what she says too, to see if I'm just like a one-offer that I just have issues with everyone's recommendations clearly. But what this is, it's a story of Johnny Tremain. It's during the Boston Revolution, so kind of the Americas versus the Brits, and there's an accident that happens in the beginning of the book that causes him to no longer be able to do his trade. So he's a silversmith, and his hand gets injured in a way that he is no longer able to do that. And through trying to find a different vocation, he ends up with a party of revolutionaries, and he ends up helping them with the revolution. So you see Paul Revere, you see John Hancock, you see a couple of different people that are familiar names as part of the revolution. And there's certain aspects that I liked, but then at the same time, I just feel like I was not absorbed in the book. I was not engaged. I just was not interested in the story. So for me, yeah, it was just a 2. If you really like wartime books, which I do, I really do. One of my favorite books is Stephen Crane's Red Badge of Courage. And I was really expecting to like this, and it just wasn't there for me. So sorry, Nick. I don't like it. Okay, so we're gonna stop talking about that. Next on my list is a book that I did a specific reading vlog for, so I'll put that in the cards as well in case you'd like to see that. And that is Nancy Drew. So this is the first Nancy Drew, The Secret of the Old Clock. And it's so funny because in the comments of that vlog, man, I really ruffled a few feathers. Now, I didn't necessarily hate this book. I think I ended up giving it like a 3-star rating, but I mean, this book was written in the 30s. Okay, so it's very Mayberry, it's very Lassie, it's very, you know, cool, calm, and collected. Everyone's very dainty and pure, and yeah. So there is a lot to make fun of. I didn't make fun of too much, but it made me chuckle a lot. Like this book really made me chuckle. And that's not a bad thing. That's what I liked the most about it. I really did love how like small town and just, yeah, Andy Griffith this was. I did really enjoy that. But I also felt that it was simplistic. I also felt like it wasn't really a mystery. I didn't really find this to be mysterious. I felt like she was just really nosy and kind of fell into everything. So I just, as a full reader, obviously I'm not 11 anymore. Like I said in my vlog, I love Nancy Drew when I was a kid. I read a lot of them. I don't know that I read all of them, but I will say I really liked the Hardy Boys more. I don't know why, but I just loved the Hardy Boys. And I don't know if it was because of their dynamic together, but I just felt like their cases, there was more mystery to them and more at stake. And this, I just feel like we really get a lot of like, Nancy Drew, she's an attractive 18-year-old, and Nancy Drew, she's just so smart, and Nancy, like, there's just too much pumped into this perfect blonde, you know, girl who just happens to be really good at solving cases, which are they cases? So anywho, I did give it 3 stars, which is still really great. I do have a specific vlog for this, so if you want to take a look at that, please feel free. But I highly recommend kids reading these books. They're super like fun in the sense that these were written in the 30s, like, and we're still retelling Nancy Drew stories. We're still putting Nancy Drew on TV. There's something here. So I am not knocking this book. So please, I hope I haven't ruffled any more feathers, but I still do highly recommend reading these books. I am going to keep this one. If I find any more in the same style, I will probably pick them up as well. I just think it's funny comparing my 11-year-old self to now, and just like, it made me laugh in a good way, Anywho, so the next book that I have on my list here is another middle grade. Like I said, I read 7 middle grades, so we have a lot to talk about in middle grade. And that is Ellen Raskin's Westing Game. And I feel like I'm gonna ruffle some feathers again. I did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. I did not like it. I didn't feel like it was written enough, like there wasn't enough clarity here for middle graders. Like I didn't feel like you could actually solve this puzzle on your own while you were reading. I was completely lost. There was no significant like difference between when a new character was speaking. It was just kind of like all of a sudden you were like, wait, who's talking right now? And So I did not like the writing style. I never got into the book. Quite frankly, I should have DNF'd it, but I didn't because so many people have talked about this book. If you're not familiar with this book, it's basically where all these people, I think like 16 people, end up coming and living at this one high rise, and then this person passes away, and in the will they all get clues to try to figure out who the murderer was, and then they can win the fortune or something. It reminded me of Clue, but like a really bad version of Clue. And I love Clue. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about the movie. But I did not get along with this at all. I'm happy I read it, but yeah, it's one of those things. I think I have a weird thing about like when everyone else likes something, I'm like always the opposite. And I don't know why that is, but it just happens to be. So I did like the ending, like the very, very end. I won't give spoilers away, but I did like that. But all in all, I wasn't really a fan of the book altogether. I did miss one on the top of my list, which was one of the adult fiction books, which is Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. I am reading this as part of Emily from Novell Novels read-along of the Wolf Hall books. So this is the Thomas Cromwell series. This is the second in the series, and I really liked it. There are portions, obviously, where you kind of get a little like bored or out of it because there's a lot of dialogue, but I listened to it on audiobook, and I gotta tell you, it's fantastic on the audiobook. The narration is great. There's a little bit of music between chapters. The dialogue is fantastic. When you can hear the inflection and the difference in speakers, it just makes the read that much more enjoyable. And I really did enjoy this one. I feel like I liked this one more than Wolf Hall, which is much longer. I did give this, I think, a 4-star rating. Yes, 4 stars. Really enjoyed the writing style. I really enjoyed the care to the characters, the dialogue. In this, obviously, we have Thomas Cromwell. This really is a story of Thomas Cromwell. It's not so much a story of Henry VIII or his wives. It's really telling Thomas Cromwell's influence and work in this time period where he is a lawyer and he is Henry VIII's kind of right hand. And I think at one point he actually says that. Henry VIII like apologizes to him in some scene and says, "You are my right hand." And I'm like, ooh, I don't know that you want to be that close. But I gotta tell you though, the very end scene in this book is chilling. It is chilling. And I'm excited to get the final read done, which is Mirror in the Light, which I have already read, but now had already read the first 2 now. I think the third one in my reread is going to be that much better. So very excited for that. So I gave that 4 stars. So let's pop back down. Another book that I read that I have a dedicated vlog to is Anne of Green Gables, and you'll know if you've seen that vlog. I really loved this book. It is another book that I did give 5-star rating to, which again, I don't do that very often, but I was pleasantly surprised with that read. As you know, I've mentioned whenever everyone loves something, I'm usually the opposite. But this book really engaged me in the sense of something that I love, which is learning. Being that this starts out with an orphan being fostered out of the Canadian asylum system. It really is making me think about other books that I've read regarding orphans, and I'm really thinking about doing some more research in a non-fiction capacity on that. So whenever a book can do that, I know that it's good. I also really loved the characters. I thought that The author did such an amazing job of pulling you back into your childhood, making you remember your imagination. I really resonated with Marilla. If you watch my vlog, you know I have mentioned this, but she is me. I am her. It's so crazy, but I just really loved her. Anne was great. I mean, she's not my favorite character just because she talks way too much, but I appreciate her passions, her enthusiasm, her zeal for life. She's just such an amazing individual, and she never annoys you. It's just more so like, wow, this kid has a lot of energy. And I didn't think I was going to continue on in the series, but I do have access to them on audiobook, so I am going to go ahead and do that. If you don't know, Anne of Green Gables is about Anne with an E, and she comes to Avonlea. She is adopted by Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert, who are brother and sister, and originally they wanted a boy to help at the farm, but they get a girl, and it just gets going from there, and they find that they wouldn't have had it any other way. And like I said, is a very enthusiastic young lady and changes the lives of everyone around her. So very, very good read if you're interested in that kind of thing. And that's also a middle grade book. The book I DNF'd, which is next on my list, is Wayside School. So Sideways Stories from Wayside School. For some reason, I recollect loving this as a kid. I got 30 pages in and I was like, I'm done. I'm unhauling this. This is not for me. I would call this more of an elementary read as opposed to a middle grade read. And it's definitely a read for kids. There's no getting past me. I didn't think they were silly stories. I just thought they were dumb. So I DNF'd that one. The last two books that I have here on my list, I listened to on audio on my Hoopla account. So I'm just going to bring that up so I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. So I read the Louise Erdrich, the Birchbark House, which is about a little girl who is Native American, and they are kind of going through their everyday. I wish that we had read these kinds of books when I was a middle grader. When I was in middle grade, or not middle grade, but like elementary school, I did live in like Chippewa Falls and more northern cities, and we had these units learning about Native Americans and their way of life, but we also got a very whitewashed lesson of what that meant. This book is amazing. You know, it really comes down to traditions and lifestyle and the everyday, you know, making moccasins, cleaning moose hides, enjoying nature, enjoying family. There was a chapter about smallpox epidemic, which was so saddening. But it's all out of the perspective of the young girl, and I can't remember her name, but it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Let's see what I rated it here. It looks like I gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I thought the narration was great. It is part of a series, so if you're interested in something like that as part of a series, it's definitely available. I can't remember what this next one is called, but I know one of them is called Porcupine. That might be the next one. I'm not sure. But definitely something that I enjoyed very much, and I wish that I would have had more during the time that we were learning about Native Americans, because as I'm sure you are aware, a lot of times in school everything is whitewashed, and it's just really saddening that you don't get the authentic lesson there until, you know, you take a Native American Studies course in college, and even that is a little bit whitewashed. So I was happy to have read that. I really liked it. I thought it was really great for middle grade read. So really enjoyed that one. And then the last book that I read, also on audio, it's called Inside Out and Back Again. And the author's name, this is going to be terrible, but it looks like Thanhha. I'm really sorry, I am terrible at names, but this is a Vietnamese story, so it takes place during the break between North and South Vietnam, and this family ends up coming to America, and they get sponsored by a certain family, I believe in Texas. Gosh, it was so long since I've read this. I read it in the beginning of March. But you get it out of the perspective of the little girl, and it's written in prose. So it's a really unique way of seeing the lives of these children. I believe it's her, and then she has a couple of older brothers. So they come to America and they have to assimilate. And she talks about how kids at school make fun of her hair, they make fun of her skin tone, her accent. Of course, you have that stigma of because you can't speak English, you must be dumb, which she's not. You know, she's one of the smartest kids in her class back home. She comes to America, she wants to be the smartest kid in her class again, and has that, you know, barrier because she doesn't speak the language. So it's very hard for her to cope. She gets picked on a lot. I really did love the way that it was written. Usually I don't like poetry. But because I listened to it on audiobook, it really didn't feel that way. It just felt like short stories, like really compacted, and the vocabulary packed such a punch that it just really, I just loved it. And I'm finding that I'm really enjoying the Vietnamese story. Not enjoying, usually it's very sad, but I'm really enjoying being able to learn more about that. I know last year I read The Mountains Sing, and that I just adored that book. It was so good, and reading this as well, I'm finding that I'm really enjoying that country's stories, more of the authentic story written by own voices. So I really like that. I thought that was great for middle grade. I am enjoying finding books that are own voices in middle grade, because I think it's important to have your middle graders read diversely, so that as they build their reading libraries, their own reading backgrounds, that they do have a diverse reading. So I really liked that. Wow. So 9 books, 1 DNF'd. I have been talking in circles, and I do apologize, but I hope that if you're looking for any good reads, and some of these being some that maybe you haven't read already, that you got a little of some insight there, and find your way to some of these books. Like I said, I read 7 middle grade, 2 were fiction. 5 I did read in audio. With 2 of them I had the physical copy, but I kind of interchanged reading physically and then through audio. But 4 were physical reads, and 4 of which I owned. So that's really great. As far as any of the books that I finished, Anne of Green Gables is the only book that was on my list of 22 books to read in 2022. So I did check one of those off. Oh, actually, so was Johnny Tremain. So I got 2 books checked off of that list. So that's really great. Hopefully I can get through more, because you can see it's still quite a big pile there. But overall, I think this month was a really great reading month, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else I can get read in the next couple of months towards the end of the year. So until next time, I'm so happy and just thankful that if you have made it this far. But until next time, I hope you are reading something great, taking care, and staying safe. And as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.
Good friend, and that's in the thick and thin.